After being in a field fighting a war for several days, months, or even years, soldiers aren't going to have perfectly clean armour. In this video, I'll show you some quick and easy methods to add some battle damage to your miniatures. From small scratches to huge large gouges in armour, these tips will allow you to paint your models in a way that looks like they've been fighting the war for a long time. Battle damage is a great way to tell little stories with your models, giving them some extra character and truly making them unique. So to apply battle damage, I do this after I've painted the model. So you can see how I've painted this Salamander's Terminator. Now I'm going to add some scratches to his armour. So first, with some Rhinox hide, I'm going to apply some straight lines where I want the scratches to be. So the Rhinox hide is going to give the impression of the paint being chipped away from the armour, and with there being a gouge into that armour, which we can give the impression of by adding a highlight later. You want to keep these lines quite straight and just pick out a few spots on the armour where you want to add the battle damage. You don't want to go too overkill with this. Less is more when it comes to this battle damage. It's easier to add a few more scratches than it is to take them away. So pick your spots carefully, work your way around the model, and just apply a few spots, some straight lines of Rhinox hide, which will be the battle damage. As this Terminator is from the Leviathan box set, I'm imagining some of these scratches are going to be from claws of Tyranids. So in certain places, like here, you can add some parallel lines, like the fingers of the claws. Just add some scratches to the Terminator. And after I've picked out a few spots and I've applied those lines of Rhinox hide, you can see where I've picked the areas that I want to be scratched up. And now I'm coming in with some moot green, but this is because I'm doing this on a Salamander. Whatever chapter you've painted, use the highlight colour that you used on their armour. So for me it's moot green here on the Salamanders, but it could be any colour depending on your chapter of Space Marine. And what I'm doing here is applying a really thin line right underneath the Rhinox hide we just applied. This is what will give the impression of some depth to that scratching, as well as add interest and highlight, and it really does work together really well with that Rhinox hide, give the impression of a chip or scratch in the armour. So we want to make sure that this highlight goes right next to the Rhinox hide, leaving none of the base colour of the armour in between. And just make sure I apply really thin lines of moot green right up against that Rhinox hide. It's going to give the impression of some depth to all of those scratches, really sell the effect in a really quick and easy way to add some battle damage to your Space Marines. Just make sure they're nice and small, right up against the Rhinox hide. You'll see how it really does give the impression of some depth and a really quick, easy way to add some gouges through the armour. And with those gouges on the coloured armour, now I'm going to apply some onto his black shoulder pads, just to show how I'll do it over black. So I'm going to add them just here. So it'll be like a couple of scratches, like a Tyranid's gouged at his shoulder. So once again, I'm using Rhinox hide, just applying a couple of thin lines. Rhinox hide works really well for this because it sort of gives the impression of dirty, rusty armour underneath. So after you applied a couple of lines of Rhinox hide, coming in with some Dawnstone. This isn't going to be that noticeable on a shoulder pad, unfortunately, but with the highlight of Dawnstone, just emphasises that Rhinox hide a little bit, and gives the impression of a nice gouge on the shoulder to this Terminator captain. With those scratches done, that is the quickest and easiest way to add a little bit of battle damage. So next, I'm going to show you how to tell some stories with some battle damage. If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And if you'd like to support the channel, please become a member by pressing the join button down below or joining me over on Patreon. So with this Terminator here, I'm going to tell the story of he's been in a long hard fight by adding some of those scratches from before, as well as some more minor scratching around the power fist and finishing up with some heat damage to his gun. So the first thing I'm going to do is these little scratches on his power fist here, like he's been punching his way through a horde of Tyranids. So once again I'm using Rhinox hide for this, but instead of doing big lines I'm sort of stippling little bits on just around the edge of the power fist. This is just going to give the impression of that paint chipping away as he's been punching his way through a horde of Tyranids. So I'm just stippling this on. Some people use a sponge for this, but I find I have much more control over where I want the chipping effect to be by using the tip of a brush and just gently stippling on. Doing it over the fingers as well. Once again, less is more for this. It's easier to add some more scratches later on than it is to take them away. So don't go too overboard with it. Just pick a few spots that you want to give the impression of chipping and stipple on some spots of Rhinox hide. I'm going to do a little bit here further up the power fist as well. Just adding different spots of stippling in different areas, making sure you can still see bits of that original colour underneath. This isn't a huge gouge or lots of heavy damage, this is just sort of chipping away at that paint. So I've added a few different spots, different areas all over that power fist. Just telling the story, it's had some really heavy use, punching his way through hordes and hordes of Tyranids. So I'm just gently stippling on little bits of Rhinox hide. And I'm also going to do some here around his feet as well. So it's been punching his way through. A lot of the damage on this Space Marine I'm going to apply on this power fist side to the Space Marine, leaving the other side relatively undamaged. So I'm just stippling on some more spots down here by his feet where it would have been chipped by having enemies attacking and him booting enemies out the way as he's charging through. With that Rhinox hide stippled on, you can see how it's given that effect of lightly damaged armour. So now I'm coming in with some moot green again. Much like with the larger scratches before, I'm applying little bits of moot green just on the underside of these areas. So where I've got little bits of brown here, I'm picking some of these and I'm just applying small spots, stippling this on as well. A bit of moot green. Just give the impression of a little bit of depth to some of these, making some of them appear a little bit larger than others. I'm just applying small spots of moot green in selected places right next to the Rhinox hide I just applied. Doing it here on the bottom as well, picking a few spots, just stippling on little bits of moot green. Just like the light's catching the edge of a scratch or something like that, and adding some definition. And with those spots of moot green applied, you can see how it's given the impression of a bit of depth to those scratches. They really do look quite scratched into the armour, but there's one final thing I can do just to give the impression of some bare metal showing through. And that's with some lead belcher. Just going to very carefully stipple on a few spots of lead belcher. I don't want these to be too big, just want to catch small areas. It'll just give the impression of a little bit of shine, like a bit of exposed metal showing through from those scratches. Just carefully stippling in little bits of lead belcher into those areas of Rhinox hide. It's like a little bit of bare metals being exposed. And with that lead belcher applied, that's how to add some quick, simple scratches to your model. So now I'm going to add some deeper scratches like I did before. So I'm adding these large scratch patterns with the Rhinox hide once again. really telling the story of this Space Marine, using this side to hold off the wave of Tyranids. When I add the heat effect to his weapon on the other side later on, we'll show that he's using one side as a defensive measure while blasting away with the other. So now with some moot green, adding the depth to those scratches, once again just placing this right up against the Rhinox hide I just applied. Doing this can be great if you're playing Crusade games of 40k. If your models get injured, taken off the battlefield, it's a great way to add to that story. Keep a record of your Crusade game by slowly adding bits of battle damage as they survive through the series of wars. And it also just makes your characters a little bit more unique. Helps you tell a little story with each model. You can see I'm just applying that moot green next to all of those scratches of Rhinox hide, really giving the impression that this side of the Terminator's been up against the wars. And after this, we'll add the heat effect onto his weapon. We'll have a really nice looking Terminator. So now it's time to start adding that heat effect. Like that weapon's been firing at full speed for a prolonged period. So for this I'm using Seraphim Sepia first. So it's a shade. And I'm going to apply this sort of in the middle of the barrel of the weapon. Obviously this also works great for flamer weapons and melter guns, things like that. I'm doing it here on this sort of Gatling gun style weapon, as it will give that impression that it's been firing and the metal's got really hot. So I'm applying some Seraphim Sepia. Got to wait for that to dry. And now I'm going to apply a second layer just to really strengthen it a bit. So I'm coming through and stippling on a second layer of Seraphim Sepia over the first. So just give that impression of the heat warping the metal. And after the Seraphim Sepia is applied, we've got that band of colour now in the middle. And next I'm coming in with some Caraborg Crimson. I'm doing much the same as I did with the Seraphim Sepia, but picking up a spot further along. I'm going to make sure I overlap ever so slightly, so I get those transitions between the colours of the heat. So again, I'm sort of stippling this on, making sure it covers all of the metal, stains it that darker colour. It might take a couple of layers to get a solid colour that we're looking for. Make sure I cover a little bit of the sepia with the Caraborg Crimson as well. And after that's dried, you can see we're getting that nice effect. Those colours are bleeding into one another. So there's just one more colour left to apply to get that full-blown heat damaged metal look. And that's going to be with some Drakenhof Nightshade. So this is a nice dark blue colour. So I'm applying it just at the end, slightly overlapping the Caraborg Crimson again. Once again, it might take a couple of coats to get a nice solid colour. This will really give that effect of that weapon being fired on full auto for so long that it's heated up the barrel and damaged the metal. And there we have that heat effect applied to the weapon of this Space Marine Terminator. And those are some quick and simple battle damage weathering techniques for your miniatures. Let me know in the comments down below if you would like to see me take on some more extreme weathering and battle damage, such as missing limbs, huge gouges out of armour, things like that. So thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to help out the channel you can join me over on my brand new Patreon. And happy painting!